Hi, this is Steve with Coin Stuff I Like. And this time I'm bringing you a video about the Eisenhower Dollar RPMs, Repunched mint marks. And the Cherry Picker's Guide has a listing at FS 501 and once it's in Cherry Picker's Guides, then the third-party grading companies will pick it up. And here's a couple of PCGS MS66 coins that are FS 501s. There's 298 that are graded or in the PCGS pop report, and of those, there's only 167. There's 166 plus, and there's 53 MS66, which we have here. I also have a CAC MS66 that I'm not showing. But why am I showing two coins here? The reason I'm showing two coins is because they are not the same RPM. They're two different dies. The source dies are two different dies, and they both made it to be attributed as FS 501. Let's look into that.
There are a number of RPMs throughout the Eisenhower Dollar series, both from San Francisco Mint and Denver Mint, and across dates. There's a number of them, but the only RPM that is listed in the Cherry Picker's Guide and is attributed by PCGS is the FS 501. But as I said, there are actually at least two primary different die varieties, two different RPMs that are commonly attributed into a FS 501 holder by PCGS. And we'll look at it and get a little bit of understanding why that is the case. First of all, the true FS 501, the one that is listed in the Cherry Picker's Guide, is also listed by Wiles as RPM 001, Wexler as WRPM 004, and Tom Calancis as IDDD RPM 4. And in each of these references from Wiles, Wexler, and Calancis, they cross-reference back to Cherry Picker's Guide. And Cherry Picker's Guide, at least the 2012 5th edition, volume 2, cross-references its listing to Wiles or Kanika's RPM 001. So it's clear that the intent is that that is the true FS 501. But there is another RPM that's often makes it in fact, more frequently makes it into the FS 501 holder. I have 22 PCGS attributed FS 501s. And of those 22, 21 of them are the alternate FS 501, and only one is the true FS 501. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So this is actually the predominant coin or die variety that ends up in a PCGS FS 501 holder. Cherry Picker's Guide does not list this particular RPM. Wiles lists it as RPM 002, and he only lists two. Wexler listed as WRPM 3. I'm sorry, this is backwards. It's WRPM 004, and this should be 3. That's a typo. Sorry about that. And the same thing for the Clancis. This should be 4, and this should be 3 over here. So they have and describe and list a second RPM. Clancis lists actually 4 different RPMs of the 1971 Silver Business Strike series. He lists 4 different ones. Wexler originally listed 4, but has 2 of them now on needs further evidence because they think that it was a broken die punch or mint mark punch that gave the appearance of the RPM. So now Wexler lists only 2, and Clancis has a list in his book of at least 3 to 4 of them. And then the Ike group lists only 1, which is this one. So a little bit of confusion there, partly because of my typos, and I apologize for that. That typo is going to reappear on other slides. By the way, I did write a companion article, and I'm going to put that down in the description for this video, so you can click on that and get some more photos and information. So let's dive into these and look into the similarities and differences. So the true FS 501 has a northwest remnant of the original mint mark punch, and so does the alternate. They if you're just glancing at them, they look similar. There's a northwest remnant, although this remnant has a little bit more spread, a tiny bit more spread, and is a little bit more robust than this one over here. So you're really looking at them, and you're really discerning. You could identify them just by looking at the mint mark, the differences. But if you're glancing at them, you're going, yeah, okay, RPM, that one, they look similar, and they both end up in FS 501 holders. However, if you look at them and start breaking them down by die markers, you'll identify differences beyond what I just described. So Clancis developed mint mark placement lines, which you see here already drawn on these photos, where the references are the tip of the 7 to the bottom of the bottom bar of the F, the right side of the S, and the right side of the 7. You draw those lines, and then you can discern that the mint marks are punched in slightly different areas. Realize that back then, during the Eisenhower series, the mint mark was punched onto each working die. So there could be slight variations in the position of the mint mark from working die to working die. So it's useful to have a means by which you can actually use mint mark position to identify different dies. So if you look at this, the true FS 501 is a little bit more clockwise rotated than the alternate FS 501, and you can see how it's this side of the S comes a lot closer to the 7, where this one's a little bit further apart. They're very close, but this one has a little bit more clockwise rotation than this one, and you can identify it that way. In fact, I can look at photos now. I've looked at this enough where I could look at photos and say, yeah, that's probably the alternate because it's less clockwise rotated. That one's more clockwise rotated, and it's probably the true. There are other die markers that can be useful in differentiating the two. For example, the true FS 501, besides the spread, so to speak, of the remnant, there's a couple parallel die scratches just southeast of the mint mark. Another one here, but these two are pretty characteristic. And there's die scratches that go across the 7, not over the device, but in the field. But notice that they're oriented from northeast to southwest as they're going through here. Also, this is a one you can pick up in pictures, and certainly it's a great identifying feature because it doesn't appear on the alternate. Is there's a die gouge down here in the towards the base of the 7 on the right side. There's a similar die gouge, although not as prominent, that's also at the right side of the base of the 9 and the right side of the base of the first 1 in the date, or the second 1 in the date. I'm sorry, the second 1 in the date. Again, look at the article. There's pictures of that in that particular article. On the alternate, and this is something that the Ike group put in their book, and it's on the website in terms of attributing these, is the parallel die gouges that are just above the 1. You can see the lower of the 2 is about equal to the bottom of the T, but they're stacked on top of each other and they're parallel, and that's easy to identify this particular RPM. Let's look a little bit more into the true RPM. Here's a little bit closer, and again you can see those parallel die scratches as opposed to the die gouges over here. Parallel die scratches just south east of the mint mark. And here's another look at the die scratches here and the die gouge at the bottom base right side of the 7. Again, here's some other images that give you that particular view. And here's a little bit more up close of that parallel die gouges on the alternate FS 501, the alternate RPM. But there's other die markers, and one on this alternate is there is a die scratch that goes from southeast to northwest off the tip of the 7. Again, remember the direction, the orientation of those die scratches. This one is going southeast to northwest. Over here on this one, they tend to go northeast to southwest. So this one you can pick up, particularly if you wobble it and pick up the light, you can pick up that particular die scratch. And then there's other die scratches around the 9, again oriented from southeast to northwest. There's a few other die markers that are in the article, but this is another key one that I want to bring up. In the true FS 501, in the one example that I have, it's an early die state, and it has this die crack that's running pretty much rim to rim at the top of the R in early die state. That's important because this thing could have progressed and ended up with a cut or broke the die, and you take the die out of production. So that's key in early die state. I should also note that Wiles, as opposed to the other attributors, Wiles, in his listing of the RPM 001, the latest die state that he's examined was early middle die state. So just a little bit beyond the early die state. And that's the latest one he had. On the other hand, Wiles on this one has die state to, I think, very late die state. easily late die state. So that suggests a greater production run of the alternate than this one. I have this particular image in here because there is a very, very slight spread, very minor double die averse on this alternate FS501. You can see it here in the lower right foot of the R in Liberty. This one you cannot, even in early die state, it does not have any readily apparent double die. So I mentioned earlier that I only have one of the true FS501 and a bunch of these. And I also suggested that this one may have had a greater production run, producing coins all the way into late die state, very late die state, where this one here may have ended up failing, the die failing, and taken out of production. So maybe a shorter production run of this particular die variety, the true FS501. And again, corroborating that is my example is the early die state, and the latest example that Wiles saw is early middle die state. So what I did is I said, well, let's look at this. I have only one of these and a bunch of these that are all in PCGS 501, FS501 holders. I said, let's look at it. And what I did is I gathered 46 images, not of my coins, but other coins attributed by PCGS as FS501. And these are high quality auction photos from Stax Bowers and Heritage and even eBay, and the using their images, and then also True Views. So I managed to get 46 different certified PCGS attributed FS501 images, and I looked at them, and the die markers are pretty clear on both of these if you got the light right and a good quality of image. And of those 46, I was able to clearly and certainly identify 29 of those. And this is the breakdown: three of the true and 26 of the alternate. So again, this is sort of following my own of one true and 21 alternate, sort of following the same distribution. I also had some that I was not certain. It's sort of possible, and those broke down into 4 of the true and 6 of the alternate that were possibly identified. So that's 39. And then of those 46, there are 7 that I just couldn't identify. The light or the photo quality just prevented me from identifying which it was. But nevertheless, of a certain, it broke down into about 10% of the true and 90% of the alternate. And when I added the possibilities in, it was 12% true and 88% of the alternate. And then when I added my own personal collection, which were attributed FS1, 501 PCGS coins, when I add those in, there's 13% true FS501 and 87% alternate. So in the article, I did a little bit of conjecture and based on some evidence and hypothesis. Let's say the true FS501 did fail somewhere right at the end of early die state, early die state or early middle die state. Well, Romines suggested that that would account for about 13% of the die production, and that's it of full die production. In 1971, the Eisenhower dies produce an average of 100,000 coins for a full production run. So if the die failed, the true FS 501 die failed, then you would expect somewhere around 11% true FS 501s and 89% alternate FS 501s, if that hypothesis is correct. It's interesting how those numbers, how those percentages actually come out. So it may be very well that the true FS 501 did fail because of this die crack, and they took it out of production early, meaning that there are going to be fewer of these that are attributed, and fewer that, and much harder to find as well. So you have a coin, two coins that are similar on first glance, but when you really dig deep, that you can differentiate these two pretty easily. One appears to be less common, certainly winds up in PCGS FS 501 holders far less frequently than this other one. And it's probably due to a lower mintage because of failed die on this one. And this one probably went through a full die production run. After all, Wiles saw late die stage or very late die stage examples of these. So that probably a full production. So in summary, both are desirable for the serious eye collector. They're both desirable to collect, and hopefully providing you with the die markers, you could differentiate and identify those two. This one here is probably lower mintage and probably should carry a little bit more premium than this one. So there you have it. Remember, when you're buying coins, buy smart, but buy stuff you like. Buy coins you like. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.